This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. And in addition to the news, and in addition to reviewing the last episode of Lower Decks, we have a special co-host today, Matt from the Shuttle Pod.
Hey guys.
Welcome, Matt.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Excited to talk all things Lower Decks.
Yeah, it's very hard to believe that we are at the very end of the show.
Yeah, it's bittersweet.
So after we do our review, we're going to run my interview with Mike McMahan.
Which I did forget to mention in the intro.
We did. And how dare we forget?
I know. It's Mike McMahan, for God's sake.
Yeah, he was just a super nice guy. So,
but let's start with news. We don't have a lot, but we have a little. We got a bit of casting news for Starfleet Academy.
You know what's funny is this is either very little casting news or very big casting news, depending on who you are.
Right.
That's true.
So the news is a woman named Becky Lynch, actual name Rebecca Quinn, is revealed that she has a role on the show. I mean, we've already have like over a dozen people who are in the cast, so this she's not like one of the stars, but she is super famous in the world of wrestling. I mean, I don't follow wrestling, but I've heard of her just because she's, a major wrestling star.
I haven't heard of her, but wrestling is huge. Like if you put a wrestling star in your show, you're bringing in a huge amount of people.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Variety covered it, so her just making a Instagram video, which was nice. And she was a world champion. She talked about going from being a world champion to space. So it was cute. She knows how to do the Vulcan salute.
It took her a minute. She fought with it a little bit, and then she got it. And she said she's part of the bridge crew. Right,
which I think, we've heard that there's ships, and they've described Holly Hunter's character as Chancellor and Captain, which I think is specific language they're using.
Yeah.
Presumably there's a ship, and she's not a student. She's just a bridge officer. She's probably the security officer, because, why not?
Right? Seems like she would be.
In a way, I mean, wrestling is acting, obviously.
For sure it is.
Oh, it totally is, yeah.
And you don't make it to the top, literally to the top of wrestling, unless you're good at it. And she's been in a couple other things. There's a lot of wrestlers have made that crossover and made it big.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of John Cena. That
he's funny too.
Peacemaker show.
Yep.
It's great.
Yeah.
So
Moana.
Right. Obviously, The Rock started in Star Trek.
And The Rock, that's right.
Yeah,
Never forget the Voyager episode.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very big star.
And what's his name? Was it like The Big Show was a giant Andorian in Enterprise? That's another wrestler.
Oh, yeah, there have been wrestlers on Trek before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it helps that at the time UPN had the WWF, now WWE, thing going on. So they wanted that cross-pollination.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get a few wrestling fans watching the first season of the show.
Maybe.
To check it out. That can't hurt.
Couldn't hurt.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Exactly.
So let's do a little Section 31 news. Tunde, the director, had a little interview in it's really more of a press release / interview that Paramount Plus puts out every month. They put out a kind of, here's what's coming next month. And
right. Yeah.
And it had some quotes from Tunde in it. The particular quote that caught me was, there's a particular character-driven twist that I hope will surprise and delight people.
Yeah.
It's probably something to do with Giorgio.
I assume.
He also said she's got a fantastic backstory, which is epic. So, and the movie gets into that.
The thing that stuck out to me that he said was when he was talking about how it's a different flavor of Star Trek. And then he said that it, and he used the word crucially, requires no prior knowledge of Star Trek to get into it, which I assume has been the goal all along.
Yeah. And especially now that it's a movie, not a series. That makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, the marching orders for him and the writer were that it needed to be a entry point for people.
Right.
Which I think is why when a lot of Trek fans watch the trailer or trailers, it doesn't feel very Star Trek-y because they're making sure it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Right. They very clearly made those trailers to look like other things.
But I feel like just like they always did with the J.J. Abrams movies, where they'd make these flashy, action-packed trailers. The same thing, trying to appeal to moviegoers and figuring the Star Trek people are coming anyway.
Which is an interesting assumption, by the way. But
when you look at the trailer, it just looks like a sci-fi movie. You hear the word Starfleet, you see a cameloid, you see a deep cut alien, but there's no one in a Starfleet uniform. So even in the JJ movies, you see people in clearly Starfleet uniforms. You see ships with nacelles. So, you see some of the trapped people beaming in, beaming out.
Right.
They aren't even doing that with this. So there is a Starfleet character, but are we going to ever? I bet at some point we're going to see Rachel Garrett in kind of a traditional Starfleet uniform.
Yeah. And we've seen one where she's in kind of a tactical gear that's Starfleet, but that's it. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, but people want to see kind of the early 24th century monster maroon. They want to.
Yeah, I'm very curious if they're going to do that because they should. But
I bet they do.
Yeah.
And if they should have, but if they did, they should have put that in the trailer to just give fans something to hold on to say,
I agree.
There's some Star Trek in this thing.
There needs to be more little hints of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially now that they've done two, like a teaser and a full trailer or whatever. So somewhere in there, they should have thrown Trek fans a bone, I would say. But, oh well.
Right. We're like a month away. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll probably get some preview images, maybe some clips. So maybe we'll get some more of that. But yeah, it's the 24th. There's a couple of other little things. There was a video recorded in October that was just released where they talk about how there's going to be multiple time frames. And it does sound like the Alok character, who's the guy who kind of puts the team together, because he's so old, he's going to show up at different times. So even though the main thing is the early 24th, I bet we're going to see him maybe in the Discovery era, maybe something earlier. Who knows? But
that super old thing makes me wonder, is he Elorian?
I asked him that. He said no.
No,
or that he could say publicly anyway. Right?
No, but he wasn't cagey. He said, "I am not."
I think what's his name? The guy who's like a super Trekkie said
Rob Kaczynski.
Right. He didn't he say that he's augmented? He's basically
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why he works for Section 31, because he's basically illegal, right? Because he's genetically enhanced and something. Some good news for our European listeners, or the ones in Eastern Europe who are in Sky Showtime countries. We've confirmed Section 31 is going to be released on February 7th in those markets. So that's basically all of Europe gets it either in January or February.
So stay off social.
Yeah, you have to wait a couple weeks and then, yeah.
But, we don't know about the rest of the world that doesn't have either Paramount or Sky Showtime, like Asia and stuff like that. So, hopefully we get more info.
That's kind of ironic considering the major draw is Michelle Yeoh for this.
I'm now forgetting Paramount just signed a new deal with a new South Korean distribution partner. We'll put it in the show notes. There is a new deal, but I don't know if this will be in it or not. It's not like a full Paramount Plus in South Korea.
Right.
And they have something like that in India. And something like that in Japan, I think. So they're doing these kind of hybrid things where they're not launching Paramount Plus in these markets.
Right.
They're kind of working with someone, giving them their content, and it's on their platform, but it's usually not all of their content.
But as Matt pointed out, you've got Michelle Yeoh, and she's an international star. So that would be a smart choice to share.
Yeah.
So we've got some other movie news, but not about something new. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan has been named to the National Film Registry for preservation by the Library of Congress, chosen with the other films for its cultural, historic, or aesthetic importance. Pretty big deal.
I think it's a very big deal. There are only 900 movies that are on this list. 25 are added every year. Anyone could submit something, but it has to go through this whole process. There were 7,000 submitted just for this year. And according to the Library of Congress, this one had very strong support from the public as well. they're going to work with Paramount to make sure the film is properly preserved and all that kind of stuff. It's the first Star Trek film to be added to the registry. I think it's a big deal.
It's so cool. And Nick Meyer posted a statement saying that he was surprised and gratified when he heard about it. And he very thoughtfully paid tribute in his post to a whole bunch of people who worked on it who have died since then.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, why didn't he mention Shatner? It's like, because he's alive.
Yeah, he's alive.
No,
he only listed dead
classy.
people.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's giving. And this is huge, though. I'm so makes me so happy that Wrath of Khan is officially preserved.
Yeah, it's objectively. Can a movie ever be good objectively? I'm just going to say it's objectively good.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a mainstream hit, right? It was and is a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, and I think it transcends generations. I remember showing it to my son, who was just like, "Wow, that was great!" Like he'd never, and he's not a Star Trek guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's still culturally relevant. It's had a huge legacy. It influences other filmmakers. There was a gag, in the Deadpool Wolverine movie, where they kind of played with the Spock Kirk goodbye scene there. It's still important and will remain so.
And the Khan scream has been imitated and used again and again. So,
and will continue forever.
Will continue to be, exactly.
We can only hope.
People are saying shouldn't other films from the Trek franchise be part of the registry? Yeah, probably. Not all of them, but some for sure.
Definitely not all of them.
The first 3 Star Wars films are in there. None of the others.
Yeah, that's good.
That makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of other familial. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre made it in this year. But that is kind of an important film.
Well, it had an impact. It absolutely had an impact. I've never seen it, and I never will. But,
But it's culturally relevant, right?
Yes. I would not say it shouldn't be included.
I guess we should talk about the season finale and the series finale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm so sad it's done, but I enjoyed the finale so much. So it is, as you said, Matt, bittersweet because, I'm like, oh, that was so great. Oh, I can't believe that's it.
Yep.
I love that they made the choice to not do cameos.
That's true, because they got those out of the way in part 1, basically.
And then, they stacked them all in part 1.
Yeah.
And then part 2, we got to see, we got all of our characters and then all the side small one-off characters popping up.
All the sort of co-lower deckers in the galaxy out there that we've met show up.
Yeah, I was at first surprised. I'm like, wait, what about William Boimler and T'Pol and what's going on with them? And what about T'Pol has the Katra and isn't that going to be a thing? And and then I realized you know what? No. I don't.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on with Billups and with Shax and T'Ana and their sexy pirate holodeck adventure.
I know. How come we didn't get to see a little 30 seconds of that? Come on.
Yeah. All of that is more important. But I was, I re-listened to our last podcast and we were talking about, obviously we're going to get a follow-up to this and that.
Yeah, maybe we'll see Jadzia, all that stuff.
What's funny is all of those characters from the previous episode appear in this episode.
Yes.
So we see T'Pol and all of them, but they just don't say anything.
Right. Bashir and Garrick and everybody.
Yeah.
All the Kims.
Exactly.
But it was smart. It was the right choice. It was a very It was a finale that understood, that valued itself, valued the series. It was paying tribute to itself in a way.
Yeah, and there were canon connections, but again, there were the connections were there were more connections back to Lower Decks itself.
Yes.
Which is as it should be, really.
Including just phrases that reminded you of old things or little moments that you're just like, oh, right. Yeah. Just great little subtle callbacks.
Yeah. Like when Freeman was leaving the ship and she looked at the Cerritos sign and it sparkled, which was exactly what Tendi saw when she came on board in the first episode.
That's right.
And when T'Lyn came, didn't Tendi say, we're going to be science besties? And then
Yes,
they finally
she declared
became
that
science
from the get-go.
besties.
Yeah.
And they mentioned strange energy. I mean, I noticed, was it last week that Boimler and Mariner Boimler was eating noodles, which reminded me of Mariner eating noodles in the shuttlecraft. So just these small, like someone with a choo-choo t-shirt, like just a few things here and there that were great little reminders.
The thing that really struck me is how sneaky they were about how serialized the season was.
Yes.
Yes.
When I read your review and I was like, yes, I didn't realize that's what they were doing. So explain it a little for our listeners.
Well, because all season long, we've known that there's this multiverse thing, but they haven't gone out of their way, like teasing it and who's the big mystery. So we knew that there was a overall plot like there was last season, but last season they really overplayed it, with the mystery ship and all that. This season we've had all these one-off episodes that we didn't know they were planning something big. So like the episode with the demigod with Ollie just seemed like a fun thing.
Yeah.
But they were setting her up for the finale, and the Starbase 80 thing was pivotal to the finale and Freeman's arc. And Ma and Malor and their delivery ship, they became pivotal to the finale because Mike, of course, wanted a aggrieved Klingon sibling to be the bad guy because that's what you do in Star Trek. And, so when you look back at the season, you're like, oh, yeah, it's all woven together, but you would have never known it as you were watching it.
Yeah.
And
no idea.
Afterwards, I'm like, that's how Star Trek should be.
Yes.
No mystery boxes, no teasing, no pushing these, what is the thing too much, tie things together, but don't force it. I loved it. I loved that aspect of the finale.
Me too. And I appreciated that you identified it so clearly because I knew I loved it, but I wasn't sure what it was that I was loving. And
that's on top of, there's the more clear stuff is, of course, the character arc. So Boimler's thing with this pad, the science besties, and, Mariner's kind of growth arc towards becoming responsible.
Well, especially because whenever she came to her mom, the captain, to tell her something was going on, her mother was like, I believe you. Yes.
Which was like shocking to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a good officer. I believe you.
The one thing that didn't work for me in the finale was like how hard Rutherford was going against the ship.
Yeah, that seemed to come out of nowhere. He used to what? You love the Cerritos. Where does this thing is a piece of crap comes from? Where did that come from?
It was sort of like a few episodes back when Tendi suddenly got really weird around T'Lyn. Like it just seemed to be stronger than it should have, and then I came up with some headcanon to explain it, but this one I don't have anything.
There was like a brief mention in that episode where he couldn't connect to something, but they should have, basically they failed his character this season. I hate to be...
Yeah, he didn't get anything to do, really.
Yeah, he had no arc, and they rushed an arc for him into one episode, and that's why it felt clunky, because he's like so anti-Cerritos, and then he flips back over to say, oh no, I love the Cerritos, and then he has to tear.
As soon as he said he's having trouble with his implant, I was like, oh, okay, he's totally going to rip that out by the end of the episode. And he did.
How it ended is fine.
Yeah.
It's just that they
rushed it.
Yeah, it's like you don't throw in all of it in one episode. You build up to that. And there was, like in the last few episodes, there was kitchen sink type stuff in this episode where they're just throwing so much in because it's overstuffed.
Yeah. For the most part though, it was fine. Like throwing in little winks and nods and like going back to twaining, is funny, like showing that and,
the whales.
Yeah. The horny beluga whales, man. Those guys.
Yeah, they party.
Yeah.
I feel like all of the characters had ended well. All of them.
Yeah. They definitely set them off in a really great place, like for sure.
Oh my God. And Ransom for the win with the end. I just thought was so funny. Like, first of all, cheerfully pitting the best friends against each other. So, and then Engage
Oh my God, I know.
So
I'm so glad they did that, though, because they essentially lampooned the thing that New Trek has started to make a big deal, which is that every captain immediately needs like a catchphrase.
Which they don't.
Which they don't. And they even tell him, like, dude, this is supposed to happen organically. You don't need to make one.
Right.
But he's exactly the kind of guy who would.
Who would, exactly. And he's like, nah, that's it. I've done it. Engage the core. That's it.
But the greatest ransom moment was the fact that he was revealed to be the one that was hiding Malore, who was the MacGuffin of the episode, essentially.
Yes. Very surprised by that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't know that Grelga. I was thinking Grelka. So I'm getting my
different.
Yeah.
She was a nice Klingon.
I was going to say Grelka's way nicer than Relka.
Yeah. But he didn't know that she faked the message, but he just knew something was off about the message from the Admiral, and he was protecting the captain. I thought that was a nice moment for him, for sure.
Yes.
And we all knew there was something wrong with that message.
Oh, of course.
That was not a surprise.
No Starfleet Admiral just starts declaring people are like murderers.
Yeah, they're murderers.
Like, just casually like that,
I mean, I did like the character, though. I thought, I mean, it was over the top.
Well, she was the perfect, like, angry Klingon. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her, and I love that since Targs are sort of dogs, they went with, like, an insane Chihuahua, like, Targ for her. It was just.
Right.
And also when she communicates like the view screen, she put it right up to the view screen. There was one where the Targ's face was just filling the screen.
It's just this crazy little Targ filling the screen. Yeah.
There was some kind of interesting stuff with her fleet. I thought her flagship was pretty cool. She had
a something.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sure what it was. Some people are saying it's what a cavort should be, because cavorts were supposed to be these
larger,
big cruiser level ships, but they just supersized the old Bird of Prey when they showed it before. But it was a pretty cool ship.
Yeah, it's cool.
But the thing everyone's talking about is the reality distortion field.
Well, yeah, how can you not mention that?
Yes.
What did they call it? The Schrodinger something.
Yeah.
The Schrodinger possibility field. I had to go look for it.
Yeah, the field. Right. And then they kept calling it the S field. Which made me think somebody had trouble saying Schrodinger.
But the way they sold it, the first thing it did was turn one of her birds of prey and Klingons into a Discovery Klingon ship.
Yeah.
And one of the Klingons on board looked just like episode 1 Laurel. Right?
Yes.
Which sold you on the idea of like, oh, this thing is causing havoc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I chuckled. I was like, oh, of course they did. That's funny.
Now, it came up in our Slack, and I at first dismissed this idea, and I still dismiss this idea, but serious people, a lot of people have brought this up to me since, that this is, quote, proving that all of Discovery is on an alternate timeline. Now,
yeah, I mean, that's definitely the implication, but they're just being goofs. Like, I wouldn't read into it,
There's no way that the writer's room, the Lower Decks writer's room said, hey, let's all declare that, Discovery is not part of the prime time. That's our job to do. Let's do that. And that they would let them do that. But people, there's some people who want to believe.
Well, they want that. Yeah, they want that to be the case somehow.
And Discovery has canon problems, of course. So,
we all know it. Yeah.
But, if you want to get nitpicky, the Cerritos turned into a Sovereign class, a Miranda class, an Oberth class, and a Freedom class, all of which are part of the Prime universe. So those aren't alternate timelines. So it actually doesn't even make sense. But
no, it's just alternate. In theory, they're just alternate versions of the same class, like of a ship. And so it just so happens that one of the alternate versions of a Bird of Prey at some point in time was the crazy, like, Brian Fuller design.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay.
And it didn't feel like a dig to me.
No.
It
was
just felt like a look, see, they did exist almost. Like it's almost, proof that they really
It's just
that there was that form of Klingon.
Yeah. One of them turned into a barge of the dead, right?
Yeah.
So, we're not technically that same, but a barge.
And then a Barge of the Dead, because
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
as we chuckle, we laugh at the Barge of the Dead.
Yes.
But I mean, the reality distortion, the Schrodinger field was a lot of fun. It kind of reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Impossibility Drive, which would,
Right.
and even the way the graphics that they used when they were briefing on it kind of looked like the graphics from the movie, and when the guide would describe something.
I loved that moment, though, when they showed the graphics and the crew was like, I mean, on Lower Decks, and the crew was just like, ah! Like, just,
Right. Ransom's like, I don't want my head to turn into a cactus.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Freeman's like, can't the Enterprise do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Enterprise did show up, if you look closely, at the end.
Now, I didn't have enough chance to really pause it. Was that actually the Enterprise, or just the other? Because the other sovereign that they have talked about, right, is like the Bellerophon or something like that. I forget what it was. They made mention.
It was definitely the Enterprise.
Okay.
But it was only there after everything happened.
Right.
The Cerritos turned into a sovereign class.
Yeah, no, I remember that for sure, of course.
Briefly.
Which is funny. By the way, that's funny that I forgot about Carol, Freeman, not really liking the Sovereign. Remember, like, when they refit the Cerritos, was it between seasons 1 and 2 or something? And she's like, God, I hope they don't change our nacelles and make them all Sovereign class. And then, of course, they pop into a Sovereign class for a second. And she's like, I think it was even her who was like, ugh, we're a Sovereign class.
Yeah,
now.
I think it was her.
Because, I don't know what it is, but apparently, like, she has a problem with that. It's just funny. Like, doesn't like the design. Sorry,
The ship Shax was most interested in was when they were briefly the Terran universe.
Yeah.
The ISS
of course.
Cerritos.
Armed to the teeth.
He got so excited.
He
But
couldn't
then,
use it.
boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question. Was that from the Mirror Universe or from another Mirror Universe? Because does the Terran Empire exist in the 24th century? Because that was the thing.
Prodigy basically answered that question. Yeah, it does.
Right. It shouldn't, but now it does because of Prodigy. And essentially now they're saying, yeah, it did. Or at least some version of it.
Right. Like, it's still a what if. Everything that happens is a what if.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point. Like, this is the cat is both dead and alive. There is both a mirror universe and there isn't. Right. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So the answer to all of your questions is yes and no.
Exactly.
But I do love how the Cerritos is a character, and every finale they do something goofy with the Cerritos. Remember the one time where they took all the hull plating off?
I liked when it was made of wood.
They came up with something new to do with the ship, but yet they brought it back, and because in the end, the Cerritos is what makes the show. Yeah. And they poked fun at how the engineering section isn't attached to the rest of the ship, which was the thing that when I remember when the show first came out, and I remember hearing Mike like not happy about how people were saying that. So he was kind of acknowledging that was like one of the pre-show critiques of the show was they didn't know how to design a ship. They put the engineering section in the wrong place.
I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting all mad about that. No, I don't.
Oh, yeah. Trek fans can get mad about stuff.
I know. And so can I.
I do agree. One nacelle ships are just stupid.
That is weird. And I love how Boimler's like, how does this even work?
Yeah. Everybody agrees with that. I also, speaking of Boimler, I love that he's like the evasive maneuvers guy. Like, he's the navigation guy suddenly. He must have gotten really good at it. Like, they kept, for him to be the one sitting there, and they asked him to do it, and then he had to go down to, I don't know, it was nice to see some responsibility and acknowledgement that he's good at what he does.
Yeah.
He destroyed a bird of prey by bumping the Cerritos shields into the bird of prey before they warped out, which I thought was pretty cool. Although, I kind of wish Shax had a chance to. Shax didn't get a hero moment. Everyone got a hero moment except for Shax.
Yeah. Poor Shax. Denied again.
And T'Ana didn't really. Except she had the I love what she said. Isn't there some kind of sneaky Kirk thing we could do?
Yeah.
So she kind of inspired Billups to then put Ollie on the hull and shoot a lightning bolt at the Klingon ship. Which
was a Kirk-like thing to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I like Dr. T'Ana hugging and making a little cat sound when Freeman was leaving. She gives her a hug and makes a little cat sound, and then Shax squeezes the stuffing out of her. It was good.
That was when, and perhaps it's good that they had no time, and they were just rushing through those final moments, and they were using voiceover and montages. And even though they had 34 minutes, which is super long for a Lower Decks episode, it still felt like, God, they're just like, we need to get this in and this in and this in, and we're running out of time. I mean, like, let's imply that there's a romance between Rutherford and Tendi. Just so much was happening so fast. And at some points I'm like, okay, slow down, Turbo. You're throwing too much at us all at once. You're trying, I'm sorry that they canceled the show, but don't try to do it all.
I appreciated the packing it in because I thought, you know what, I'm going to end up watching this over and over, and I'm going to see something different every time I watch, which is part of the joy of Lower Decks as a series anyway. But I think it'll make it, I watched it several times for us and noticed different things each time.
Yeah, that's true.
I liked what was it? Is it Rutherford? Like, I think Ransom says to Rutherford, like, a little bird told me. And was it Dr. Migley?
Was Dr. Migley? Yeah. I laughed really hard at that. I was like, oh my God, there is a little bird on board. Good. That they can actually, yeah.
Like, I didn't notice that Dr. Tana was still wearing her sexy time pirate hat on the bridge.
I didn't either.
Until like the third time I watched it. I'm like, oh, she's got a pirate hat on.
And the eye patch flipped up. That's great. I didn't realize that either until actually your review with the screenshot. I missed that.
See, there's so much in there that I'm like, pack it in, kids, because I'll just keep discovering more layers and more pieces of it.
I get that.
My only question was, and I'm hoping you guys have an answer for this, what was it that Mariner said, heard the thing about the river and how you set up a dam. What did she put there? I was very...
that I don't know.
She pressed a button and then there was just a big something?
She teched the tech and suddenly it was a...
Yeah, they didn't say. Basically, there was a gluon beam, and gluons are real things, even though they sound funny. She changed the gluon beam, but we don't know what she did. But she turned it into she stabilized it instead of. So she recalibrated. She changed the shield frequency harmonics, blah de blah. But
thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's that whole, instead of trying to completely close it because you can't, it's make a dam, right? Like just stop it temporarily.
But you're right. So. They so often they give us the technobabble. The episode started off with some great technobabble, which did sound like fake technobabble, right? With with Tendi and T'Lyn talking about God, I can't even remember what it was. But it was some like high level technobabble, so much so that Mariner said, "You're making that up. There's no way that's real." Right.
Right. The kerbopple. It was the kerbopple something or other. Because it kept making me think of the teacher on The Simpsons. They said the kerbopple levels, and then they said something about how they bopped. Yeah. No, they corbed. They corbed.
Yeah. That's it. And I was like, "There's no way that's real." That's gotta be.
And then there's even a point where Freeman is like, I don't want to have time for this, for your technobabble, basically.
Yeah. Speaking of the tech stuff, was it ever explained why and what is it about newer ships like that have a problem with this energy, but even the Cerritos, which is fairly new, is okay, and Starbase 80, which is definitely old, is definitely okay, but what was it? I don't get it. What was it about the crazy energies that made older tech okay?
They said it was like when they gave them the shield stuff, the Cerritos Crusader, they haven't accounted for something in our hull that's different.
I don't know. It's something about tachyons. It was basically, they hand waved over.
Yeah, so why they didn't really say why. Okay, just checking.
Because because the Enterprise was there, and there was like a Kira class and some other new ships, and they were all fine. But I guess they can't stay there.
Right. They have to be careful, yeah.
I guess they'll have to create some old tech ships to go in and out of the portal.
I guess.
That's for the sequel, which we hopefully will get someday.
I know. Wouldn't that be nice? And Freeman gets to supervise.
It could be like a kind of a rom-com sort of sitcom thing with Mr. and Mrs. Freeman, just doing stuff.
Yeah.
squabbling as they investigate, whatever.
Because at first, the way that scene was cut, because they showed the Cerritos and they showed the station, I thought they were saying she and the Cerritos were going to be on this mission to go in and out of the wormhole. That's kind of what it sounded
like, yeah.
But then they cut to this, and I'm glad they did this, where the Cerritos lives on. Its mission continues. They're going to go talk to some goo with Captain Ransom, and Freeman's staying behind, but she's got her husband and
also coming in a weird full circle moment of assigned to Starbase 80, the thing she thought was her undoing. Well, her other selves undoing, right? So she's all freaked out about earlier in the season.
Yeah. And then really freaked out during the Starbase 80 where she had to fight the bat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I did like how Admiral Freeman wasn't ready for how bad things are. He wants a golf course and he's about to get
homemade
decon gelled.
I know. That was funny. Like, yeah, have fun slapping some gel on, buddy.
Yep.
No golf course for you.
Some homemade decon gel for you. Great. I mean, he was mad no one was carrying his bags.
Yeah. You think they have, porters there? No, they do not.
Mr. Holmes shows up, starts carrying everything.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone has a happy ending. The Klingons got a fleet.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like everyone's in a good place at the end of this.
Yeah. I was very happy with the way that it ended.
With the twist of they were trying to go for something when Mariner or Boimler says, but we're lower decks, and Ransom says, no, you're in charge of lower decks. So, yes, you're still lower decks, but it's only because
just gotten up the rink a little bit.
You're upper lower decks.
Yeah.
Senior lower decks.
People may be wondering, why didn't Shax become first officer? Because he's a commander. And there's Stevens is a commander. There's a few commanders roaming around the ship, but
Stevens, no, he's not command material.
Stevens probably went with Freeman. Now that you think
because he's sort of her little bootlicking attaché. So
around, and Shax wouldn't be a great first officer.
No,
probably not.
He probably turned it down or whatever. He wanted to stay security. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
with the promise that he gets to blow something up.
Warp core, yeah. Someday, damn it, he's going to get to eject the warp core and blow it up. He will.
He deserves it, yeah.
Yeah. And I think this season and the last two seasons, no one has a problem with Ransom being captain. Now imagine Ransom being captain in the first season. You'd be like, no.
Even Freeman didn't seem like she should be captain in the first season.
Yeah.
So they've all come a long way. But yeah, it made total sense. And that's why they had Ransom do that smart move hiding the Klingon too, to show that he's not just, that he's capable of independent thought.
I gotta tell you, what was that, a couple episodes ago when he just decided to let everyone basically fight it out amongst themselves over the crazy space cows?
Right. He pretended to be an idiot so that
the problem with that, even that made me worry a little that he wasn't really committed, because in the end it sort of was jerky, but then during it he just looked incompetent. You know what I mean? And I'm like, do you really want to lean into that? I don't know. It's all right. I'm glad he actually showed his chops here in this episode.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that reflected very well of him. Even if it was a ruse, I don't think it reflected very well on him, in that episode, which is only, a couple episodes ago, right? So
there was another thing that Mariner said during her soliloquy at the end, which again, I think they were thinking about some of the digs on the show. And she noted that, yes, on the Cerritos, we aren't as professional as they are. Because that's one of the digs on the show is no one would ever tolerate what she does on the bridge on any other starship. And she acknowledged that. She's like, yeah, I've been on those other ships. That's why they kicked me off those ships.
Right.
I guess what they're trying to say is, yes, we know that this, but we aren't like those other ships, but we still get it done. I thought that was...
Yeah, we're misfits, and when you put us together, we're a family, and we make it happen.
Yeah.
But she still rolls her sleeves up.
Yeah, if she ever rolled her sleeves down, we should be worried, honestly.
Yes. Well, Becky rolled her sleeves down.
That's right, and that's worrying.
And engineer Mariner rolled her sleeves down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're different, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to say, except that it was wonderful,
And I hope that they do a movie, at least, at some point, like a streaming movie.
I really hope so. I hope they do more somehow, someday soonish.
All right, well, why don't we play Tony's interview with Mike McMahan, and then we'll come back and do our bits of the week.
How's it going, Tony? Well, I love that Cetacean Ops hat, my friend.
Oh, I didn't even know. Yes, I did that on purpose. So, God, it's so hard talking about this. How are you? Let me ask you, how are you feeling about everything?
I'm feeling proud. I'm feeling like we accomplished a lot. I'm greedy. I would have been like, how about another 50 episodes of comedic animated Star Trek? That's very hard to make. And I don't know if I've fully processed it. Like, I'm of different minds, right? Like, part of me is like, oh, it's going to be neat to find out if people love me or hate me 5 years from now. You know what I mean? And like, it's like, we did so much, but it's like, oh, I really would have liked to have done the seeing how Billups became a Starfleet officer story where we went back in time. And you know what I mean? Like, I would have liked to have seen Tendi become a captain, and I would have liked to have explored more with T'Lyn. And there's all the, what I think, like, I just have to live with knowing we did a good job, because I want to do more, because there's like, I love these characters, you know? So, but to that extent, like, we had a blast making the show, especially in this final season. Like, we got to do a lot of cool stuff and work with a lot of cool people. And, you know, it's like, it's a high class problem to have, to love the Star Trek show you made, you know?
I'm looking at the last 3 episodes. This will come out after the finale, so we can talk about that.
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, there was the Upper Decks, and then you had last week's Fisher Quest, and this week's the new Next Generation. And in each case, maybe I'm wrong, but it almost feels like you saw the finish line and you were like, everything we've got up on that wall that we might have used, let's use it all now. Like, is there an element of that for each of these episodes?
Yeah, absolutely. The first half of the season is Lower Decks as usual. Like, this is what I would just have been doing. And then the second half of the season, I definitely accelerated and made some different choices so that when the audience watched, it didn't feel like they were left with just another season. You know what I mean? Like, it had to feel like we accelerated with a big, crazy Legacy Cast episode and William Boimler and you know, Starbase 80 and all this interesting stuff that we're doing. But this season is a fifth of the show, you know? So like, I didn't want from episode 1 all the way through episode 10 to feel like it was unrecognizable and not Lower Decks, because we were like trying to jam stuff in. So you're definitely not wrong with what you're detecting of like, you know, would I have done all of that in this season? Maybe not. Would I have done all of it? For sure. You know, so it's kind of a mix.
I think Tawny definitely talked about how the finale itself, or maybe she meant the final 2 episodes, went through a lot of changes. Mm-hmm. And so were these just like, you guys were throwing in extra lines, or were these big changes like you're putting into Paul, you're taking out a TNG character? Like, what you know, could you take us through some of those final changes that you're doing?
Episode 9 didn't go through a lot of changes because by some miracle of Star Trek, like the koala god of Star Trek, every single legacy actor that we went out to agreed to do the show. And if Sid didn't want to come back as Bashir, then the Garrick and Bashir story doesn't make any sense, because I'm not going to do Bashir. Right. That's it, you know? So like, waiting to find out about the cast of that episode was so stressful, because every single character had a story. It wasn't just like they were walking in and waving. Like, you know, Paul and Curzon have a story, and you know, all the Harry Kims have a story. Anyway, so that episode didn't go through a lot of changes. The finale did, but it wasn't changes like how you would hear about reshoots happening on like a movie that wasn't working or something. It was more that last act, which is a real goodbye to what we've known so far, and here's the new era of Lower Decks. We were taking huge swings in that act. And what was happening was we would record with the actors, and sometimes they'd be like, you didn't push this far enough. And sometimes they'd be like, you pushed this so far, I don't recognize the character anymore. So like it became dialing it in to feeling like we were taking steps forward, but not undoing stuff that we had done before. And it was really just part of the process. Like, it wasn't like we messed up. It was like, let's try this thing, see if it works, adjust. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, but from Tawny's point of view, yeah, we brought her into the booth over and over again because we were like getting down to like the granular sentences of what these characters were saying in the time that we had at the very end of this season, you know?
Well, I imagine that's, maybe you were putting extra pressure on yourself because it was it. And you wanted to get
pressure
it right.
Or like what felt right. You know what I mean? Like what feels like when you finish the finale, you don't go, wow, they really fucked up. They left me hanging on that. You know what I mean? So like
right.
everything had to get a little bit of light shined on it. And because of that, because of how, we can only use our time that we have, like in the show and in life, Tony. But every line has to be right. You know what I mean? Like every single little moment has to be right. And it happens like 7 times. It happens when you're writing it. It happens when you're editing it. It happens when you're recording our cast. It happens when you're in the audio, mix, trying to make everything land, and the music has to feel right. And, obviously the art has to be epic and good and funny and charming. And like everything has to all be working in this episode.
Right. I was surprised because it was a to be continued. I thought the alt universe some of those characters were going to play a bigger part in the finale. But now I realize like you were going out of your way to get like, let's do legacy in a huge way. But the finale is supposed to be about our people.
That's right.
So was that kind of what you were going for? It was 100%. The Cerritos and the Cerritos folks with no legacy people.
Yes. Lower Decks isn't really about legacy characters, right? It's about Star Trek writ large, and legacy characters are a part of that for sure for us. But it's like having a famous person walk into the room. You know what I mean? And the ultimate expression of that is the crossover episode, where it's like, Boimler and Mariner on the Enterprise are like, be careful what you wish for. You like legacy folks. Now you're going to get to meet a bunch of them that have been dead for 100 years. But for me, episode 9, all of the legacy characters are kind of a thank you to our fans. Like, it's not a thing I would have done unless I really wanted to be like, we've heard you guys and we want to do something that's fun for you, but also feels like a great Lower Decks episode. Because episode 9 in a lot of ways is also a Mariner and Boimler episode. It's almost the ending of the Boimler splitting up in season 2 arc with meeting alternate version Mariner and, defining their friendship crossing realities. Like, I like that about episode 9 as well. But then certainly leading into 10, it had to be about the Cerritos. It had to be about the ship. It had to be about Klingons and like different versions of the ship and engineering and shields going down and all the great kind of Star Trek battle stuff. Now,
every time I talk to one of you guys, I just talk to Brad. No one wants to. It's almost like this acknowledgement. It's not over, but has there been any thought or discussion or anything about how it couldn't be over? And if so, how would you imagine it? With, a character showing up on other shows, a streaming movie, showing up on Netflix for a 6th season? Or is this, is there anything that's possible in your point of view?
Well, I mean, it's tough because like, if you ask people from the crew and production, of course it's possible. Like, we'd all like to keep making it, I have more stories I want to tell. Our cast wants to keep working together. Like, our producer loves to pay his mortgage. But at the same time, the reality of the situation is we have 5 seasons of a show that is a miracle that it exists. And we, with the help of Secret Hideout, I got to make the show exactly the one I wanted to make. And like I grew up as a writer making this show. This was my first show I ever sold. This was my first at bat. And I'm really proud of what we did. And there's things happening in the industry, not just at Paramount, but like all over the place, where it's like we're in a moment of regroup. You know what I mean? Is I guess the nicest way to put it. And for me, it's like, okay, when do I take my shot again at getting to do more of this? You know what I mean? Because if you take, you're only going to get it. You don't amass no's and then you turn in all the no's like ticket at an arcade to like get a slappy hand. You know what I mean? Like if you start to amass no's, you permanently are the guy who was told no, and then you don't get to do it again. So, for me, it's making sure that the fans know that we love the show. It's trying to, like, I can't tell them how to vocalize that they want more of it. Like I can't be the one who leads that charge because like I benefit creatively and financially from this show. So like, it takes more voices than mine in order to cause anything change to happen. But I also, the people that I have access to talk to, they love the show too. Like if our executives on the studio side could have kept the show going, they would have too. Like there's forces at work that are bigger than us. And I'm also excited about seeing the other Star Trek stuff. Like I'm excited for Section 31. I'm excited for Starfleet Academy. Like I think it's, and Strange New Worlds, right? Like this isn't like the ending of Enterprise where it's like question marks. Like there's 3 Star Trek things coming that you guys even know about. You know what I mean? So like for me being a Trek fan in general, I'm happy. Like I love that there's more Trek coming. I love that we have the Lower Decks comics. Like I love that we got to do Lower Decks. As a Lower Decks fan, I'm going to just regroup, take the victory lap for a second. And then when the industry and Paramount seems to kind of be in a place where Lower Decks can pop back again, I'm going to make a hard push to get to do whatever we can get. Movie,
right?
More episodes, a movie and a live action spinoff. Who knows? Who knows?
Are you involved in the Tawny live action thing?
No,
with the
not
Justin.
At all. But
okay.
I think she and Justin are so smart. I'm really excited to see what they come up with.
Right. Well, that's all we've got. I could talk to you for hours. Maybe we'll have you back for like a decompression sometime this year.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And thank you guys for always, treating us like one of the big dog Trek shows. We really appreciate you guys.
Oh, you are as big a dog as there is.
I will tell my family that when they get home from school. They'll be very
I always consider like people like you and Terry and Aaron, and you're all the same in my boat.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
You'll be running a Marvel show within a year too, right? Anyway, good luck with that.
That sounds hard. We'll see.
Okay.
Well, it's always great to hear from Mike, right? He's such a nice guy and loves Trek, loves what he does. And even just about, talking about where he's gratified to be even part of Trek, it's just so great. And then he's hoping that, just like all of us, that maybe somewhere someday Lower Decks can pop back up again, right? And if the opportunity arises, he even says he's going to make like a hard push to get more Lower Decks made somewhere somehow. If it works out, if the right timing is right.
It sounds like he's got a plan. Like he knows now is not.
He's got something in the back of his mind, I'm sure.
Yeah, he knows now is not the time. He's been told there's no money in the bucket.
Right.
But he's going to do it, sometime next year. He's going to make his move. And he's got juice in the industry.
You think that soon? I mean, that would be nice.
Oh, yeah. I think he'll do it next year. Certainly after the Skydance deal. He may want to see how things settle down and, how the Section 31 movie goes. And is there an appetite for these streaming movies? But he definitely has a plan. He's not letting this go.
That's
he could. True. He's got his deal with, his Hulu show's doing well, and I'm sure he's got other irons in the fire, but he loves this and he wants to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do too. So.
And Skydance is, they had an animation kind of like arm for a while, and they're interested in all kind of forms of entertainment. So
they've got a big animation thing. Lasseter's runs it. They've got a big deal with Netflix actually they've done a lot of animated movies. They did the new Terminator show.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So they could try to turn Paramount into a big animation place. This is animation is definitely a subset of what happens within Paramount now, and I could see them making it a bigger deal in the future.
And so if that's true, hey, Mike McMahon's got a show to resurrect for you.
And then bring back Prodigy and we're all set.
Yeah, well, then we're all set, exactly. That would be really nice, though.
And I did like how he talked about how, the second half of the season was reconfigured because they were ending.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, hey, it's great that they knew and got to do that.
Exactly.
We've all seen those shows that end on cliffhangers and never come back.
Very unsatisfying endings.
Yes, very much so. All right, well, why don't we wrap up with our bits of the week? Matt, do you want to go first as our guest?
Sure. So as we had talked about in the episode review, the Bird of Prey has blown up and shrunk down over the years. And so my little bit is just a article from the very thoroughly researched, site Ex Astra Scientia. Excellent website, excellent resource. They have an article about this very crazy, bird of prey size goes up and down, called the bird of prey size paradox. So just for nitpicking goodness, if you want to check it out, see how it's grown and shrunk over the years when they need a Klingon ship.
Right.
That is such a great site for some really obscure stuff, like they go deep into bridge furniture and
yes, I love it for that.
Sometimes you just need to know.
Yeah.
Props that show up between the different ship that you're like, oh, there's this, the bookcase from the Wrath of Khan, and it shows up in this other show, and then they flipped it around and they add a thing to it, and it's on this other, it's.
And I love that, because one of the things that does specifically is show the ingenuity of reusing props and stuff that especially 90s Trek was so good at.
Yeah.
I will do a bit. Mine's kind of tied to this episode because we got some good Tamarian in this episode when Kayshawn is explaining how he discovered the ruse, and the YouTube algorithm fed me this thing because it knows I like Star Trek, but it was this thing called How Realistic is Star Trek's Tamarian Language? It's from this a linguist, Dr. Taylor Jones, and he goes way into Tamarian and how realistic it is. And he compares it a lot to, there's a lot of similarity to certain dialects of Chinese, which I thought was really interesting, that use a lot of similar styles. But then he takes it to this next level, which I hadn't thought of, which is how modern meme language has become.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now people and I've seen this both written and spoken, where people will refer to a meme.
Oh, yeah.
And you know exactly what they mean.
Oh, yeah. No, you can say the word facepalm and you know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and of course, this was 1991, so memes didn't exist.
Nope.
But they kind of got it right. It's a great little video on YouTube, which link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Nice.
To all of these things. All right. Well, mine is a special that aired on the CW and is streaming for free, I think, whether or not you subscribe right now. And it's a special called Best Christmas Movies Ever, and is produced by Friends of Trek Movie. Mark Altman and Scott Mantz produced it together. Scott appears in it. Mark directed it, I believe. And because they have Trek friends, you get commentary on these Christmas movies, which they go through all the old ones, the new ones I didn't even think of. Terry Farrell, Nicole DeBoer, Todd Stashwick, Brent Spiner, and especially Denise Crosby, who, of course, her grandfather starred in some pretty classic Christmas movies. So it's just fun. It's I love Christmas movies. I've been busy watching Christmas episodes and Christmas movies and specials relentlessly. But it's really nice to get a little Star Trek in there. And also, I enjoyed the special, and I will confess I stopped it a few times to go watch the movie.
Oh,
when they were talking about Love Actually, good. I was like, I love that movie so much. So I had to go and watch it again right at that moment. And then I came back and I watched more special. So it did what it was supposed to do.
It's pretty awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah. Good job, Mark and Scott.
Yeah. Nice job, guys.
Well, that's it for Season 5 of Lower Decks and for this episode. Thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Of course.
We have one more podcast for the year. Next week, we're going to be speaking to a certain Gates McFadden. You may have heard of her.
Who?
She has a popular podcast and was on some TV show. And then we get into 2025.
Wow.
We'll probably start the year with our best of 2024, like we did last year with our best of 2023. Matt, maybe you could join us for that.
Perhaps, yes. Probably.
Yeah,
And, and in January, we'll be moving on to Section 31. And we're going to keep this podcast going as often as we can in 2025, even though there's not going to be a lot of weekly episodes to talk about.
There's a big gap in Trek content, sadly.
But there's still always something to talk about. We had a fun chat in Slack today that I thought would make a great topic for a podcast.
Oh, there you go.
So,
and of course, you guys have always, gotten the hookup talking to great people in the meantime, too. I've always been able to.
But if people have ideas, pitches, feel free in the comment sections for our podcast article to say, why don't you do this or talk to this guy or whatever, So we're always looking for ideas, too.
and then while you're typing, you could go over to Apple and review us
Smart.
while you're there.
Smart.
Please like and subscribe.
Yeah.
By the way, I've never mentioned this. We put the podcast on YouTube just for shits and giggles on the Trek Movie YouTube page. But if you like YouTube, you could watch. You can't see us.
I was going to say you can watch us because that would make
watch
you very
a static graphic with a little squiggy line on YouTube. But YouTube, like a lot of podcasts, put them on YouTube.
They do.
So some people like it that way.
I didn't know you were regularly doing that. That's good. That's cool.
We've been doing that weekly for most of this year.
Cool.
So wherever you get your podcast, if you like that, you like Spotify, we don't care. Whatever you do.
Yeah, just go listen to
everywhere.
us. And then we will see you after Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, y'all.